Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership at TEPSA. And each episode, I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another, and bring them on to share some about them in hopes that it inspires you to tell more about your story. I'm thrilled this week to have my former colleague on here, Kelsey Lukich. Kelsey, thank you so much. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Hi, so I'm Kelsey Lukich. Like you said, I teach third grade this year at Webb, and this is my second/third year teaching, but we'll get into that. But yeah, that's what I do. That's
Awesome.
me.
Well, Kelsey, whenever I interview an educator, one of the first things I always like to ask is, there's two types of educators: those who grew up teaching their stuffed animals, always knew they would be a teacher, and then the other half who were like, I had no idea, but then I fell into it and loved it. Did you know you were going to be a teacher when you were growing up?
No, not when I was little. My Mimi swears that I've been this way for a long time and that she could see it. But I always wanted to do different things. Like for a long time I wanted to be like a doctor, and then I wanted to do, work with kids with do therapy with them. But it was always centered around kids.
Yeah.
And so it was just really finding my path of what I wanted to do. So in high school, I took a couple medical classes, electives, and then I found out that's just not for me. So then I changed my path a little bit, but it always involved kids. And then I remember my junior year of high school, someone goes, "Man, Kelsey, I could just see you being a really good teacher." And I don't know why it never really dawned on me before then, but I was like, oh, you know what? I could see myself doing that. And so it really wasn't until middle of high school that I got this just gear, this want to be a teacher. And it worked out. And I'm really thankful that it did, because I really feel like I'm doing what I have been put on this earth to do, what I've been meant to do. So,
and I can speak from experience of getting to watch you teach that it definitely is a job that you were meant to do, because not only do you tell how much fun you're having doing it, but you're just good at it too. And so, I've got to see you kind of in different levels of your learning, because you were also a student teacher at Webb before you got hired on to teach there. And so talk to me a little, what is that like, being able to be a student teacher at the school you end up working at? Because I think a lot of us, we don't get that opportunity. We end up working somewhere totally different than we student taught.
Yeah, it was really beneficial, because I knew the school culture, and I feel just our school that, at Webb, it was just it's such a specific culture, and it's so nice knowing the kids that I work with. So I was student taught in kindergarten, and then graduated in December and went straight into second grade as a long-term sub from January, I think it was 15th, and I finished the year off with them as that long-term sub. So I knew a bunch of my colleagues already, going into that position. And I knew a bunch of the kids from seeing them around, and they knew me. So it was kind of nice that they were like, oh, you were that person from that college that came in. And I was like, yeah, that's me, but now I'm a teacher. Hi. So it was really neat, and it was good to see familiar faces. I get real nervous with a bunch of stuff. Yeah. So that helped calm my nerves. But it definitely opened the door for me to get a job, because it was a weird thing where my now fiance, he had stuff going on with his work, and we were just kind of unsure of where everything was going to end out during student teaching and during the time I was long-term subbing. And so I was really blessed that it ended up the way that it did, where I could just keep that progression going and ultimately end up with the job at the school, an actual teacher contracted job. And so I'm thankful that that worked out the way that it did, because it opened a lot of doors, and I feel good the way that it went. So,
as a principal, one of the things that we love is we love getting to see future teachers in action, whether that is student teaching or like you did the long-term subbing as well. And so you get a really good glimpse not only of what kind of teacher they are, but how they fit in personality wise with the staff. And so, you got several months of that through that long-term teaching thing within second grade. And then, like you said, there were a lot of things with your now fiance. And so y'all weren't sure if you were going to be staying local or moving or this or that or anything. And so, so we didn't have any openings that fall. And then we had some things happen where we ended up having an opening and a need for a fifth grade teacher, which is quite different than kinder and second grade, where your student teaching and long-term sub was. But what I loved is when I came to you, because you were still subbing at that time. You had come back and you started subbing a little bit. So I remember coming to you and being like, "Hey, we've got an opening. Would you consider fifth?" And you were like, "Can I sleep on it?" Because it is way different than second grade. But then you came back and you were like, "No, I think I can do this." And I just loved watching you just jump into that and kind of take that on, because this in second grade you were doing ELAR in second grade.
Yeah.
And you jumped into doing ELAR in fifth. And so, what was that like, not only, doing long-term subbing where you didn't know the kids until mid-year, and then you jump into a fifth grade job, you're hired as a teacher, it's your first classroom you are completely in charge of, and it's like a month into school. And so you've got to start all that again. What did you learn about yourself through that whole process?
I learned a lot, actually. I learned a lot about myself and about teaching and about myself as a teacher and just so many things. It's funny because when I was going through school, like my school, like college and stuff, whenever people would ask me, like, what do you want to end up teaching? I would always say kinder through second, third grade. And I would always jokingly, but not really jokingly, tell them, I would prefer not to go like fifth or sixth, but if that's what Jesus wants me to do, then like, what am I going to say? And then of course that happened. So like, I'm sure he was laughing at me when I would say that for like 4 years, when I'd be like, I don't ever want to go up that high. And it was my first like actual job. So it was hard at times, because it was, to me, the best way I could describe it to people, it was a culture shock. Going from my littles of, I did a half a year in kinder and then a half a year in second grade and then a little bit of like a month and a half in second grade the next year. And then finally when we found out this is where we're going to be, this is where we're settling, to get put into fifth grade. I mean, it was a shock. It was hard. Yeah. It challenged me a lot, but I grew a lot in myself and I learned a lot. And as tough as parts of that year were, I mean, I'm so thankful that I did that, because now that I'm in third, I jumped again. Now that I'm in third, I can see, knowing where kids are in kinder, what they're coming to me from, because I finished a year with kids in second grade, and then I know where they're going to be in fifth. And so it's really beneficial for me as a teacher to know just the range of that. And then I also, through working in fifth grade, developed more skills and more practices that I've brought down. Because I mean, in kinder, second, and fifth grade, I had amazing people that were on my team that just took me under their wings and taught me so much about being a teacher and gave me so many ideas. And if I didn't have that, if I didn't have those people, I mean, there's a lot of things that I just still wouldn't know. So, I mean, I'm very thankful for the people that I've worked with along this way.
Well, and I think you bring up a great point that I've always been a believer in, is that, there are pros to staying in a certain grade level and really building up your strength in that grade level and understanding the ins and outs. But I think there's a lot more pros, and this is just my personal belief, that when you do have some experience with a younger grade level and an upper grade level all on the same campus, you really begin to understand, what you really like and don't like, instead of just what you think you like or don't like. But you also get to see like where things are headed academically. And when you come back down or when you go up, you're like, okay, I got to do a lot more work with this because I know that's where they're headed. And so I think there's a lot of there's pros and cons to both, obviously, but I can
Mhm.
really see, like, for you specifically, I just see all these neat ways that I'm like, you grew like that because you did this a little bit, and then you did this, and
Oh,
then you
definitely.
always were, even though change is hard for any of us, you always were like, I may not like the change right now, but I'm going to do the best that I can, and I'm going to make this be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when you really learn and grow throughout it. Even if in the end you're like, that fifth grade year, I learned a lot. I don't want to do fifth grade anymore, but I learned a lot. I mean, I think that's worth the time. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I think it was very beneficial. And like you said, it might not be where I feel like I'm meant to be, but I can't, if I was anywhere else, I wouldn't have learned the things that I did about where the kids end up, what they need to know. And just like I said earlier, the people that I worked with were just so great. And they taught me a lot and were like always there for me. And so, I mean, I'm thankful that I have that knowledge. And I've even been asked by like coworkers when we're like planning and stuff, like my partner teacher, for this year in third grade, we one time we were talking closer to the beginning of this year, and she even asked me, so now that you've been in fifth, did you see anything that was lacking in fifth grade that you want to start implementing in third? And so it's really neat to have those kind of conversations with people like that. So I think it's a really good thing. I personally feel like I found a really like my niche, like in third grade. Second and third, I feel like is my, where I'm supposed to be. I feel personally now that I've kind of gone the whole spectrum, but it was so much of a blessing to get to do fifth grade, even though I was not ever wanting to do it for a lot of reasons.
Well, it's exactly what you said. The moment you tell God no, the moment he's like, watch me make it happen. And
Yeah, oh
I mean, I
yeah,
can
for
think of so
sure.
many examples like that too. But I think I really feel like too, especially with you, that a lot of your comfort and feeling like you really are where you belong now is because of your varied experiences in kinder,
Mm-hmm.
second, fifth, whatever. And so, you're a younger teacher. This is only your, I guess, fully second year. I mean,
Fully
I don't
second.
even know how you explain to people how it's so,
It's a
the
lot.
dates are all weird. But
Yeah.
so you're growing up in this age where there's so much social media, there's so many teachers that you can learn from, not only on your own campus but in PD you're attending and all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things. How do you keep yourself from getting in this comparison trap where you're just like, I'm not a good teacher because I'm not doing what they're doing, or I don't feel like I'm doing enough because of what they're doing? Like, how do you keep yourself from getting caught in that?
It's hard. And I know like everyone will say that it's a hard thing to like look, and I mean there's people that I follow, on like Instagram and Twitter and things like that, where I see all the things that they're doing and all the big transformations and things like that. And I'm like, oh man, that's cool. Like how come I can't think of like things to do?
Yeah.
But like I also like it because I look at it as a way to like take things from it, of course, like you said, like PDs where I can learn from those people. And also, to me, it's sometimes I just kind of got to like close out of stuff and be like, like I'm good. No one's the perfect person or perfect educator, but I'm doing what I can. And I have things that my kids need
Right.
that no one else would know or no one else might realize. So it's important to me too to sometimes be like, like I might not do all the other stuff that some people do, but I'm doing what's best for me and for my kids. So
And that reminds
that's
me of a conversation that I had with another educator recently. Was that exact same thing of, we all feel that it's important to be on there and learning from others and going to PD and things like that, but keeping the mindset too of that may be amazing and may work for them, but
mm-hmm.
you all do something amazing. And so it's just owning your own strengths and knowing what that are, and knowing that my strength may not be a full room transformation or dressing up in costumes or whatever, but I do bring a strength and I'm going to do that really well. And then maybe bring in little elements from these other things, but I don't have to do the exact same thing as somebody to be as good as
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly, that everyone has their own things that they're good at. And there's things that you can learn and take from everyone. Everyone has their own strengths and everyone can grow, but it's just finding that about yourself.
Well, Kelsey, when you look at your own life and the things you've been through, the good, the bad, the triumphs, the struggles, what is one thing that really comes to mind that you're like, that was really instrumental in creating the woman we see today?
Um, Man, so I would just say I have a very big family.
Hmm.
My parents divorced when I was really little, and because of that, I now have not only my biological family, but I have like step family that is so amazing to me. And I can't imagine going through life without like their support. So I guess it's not in particular like one thing
Yeah.
that has made me into who I am. It's just the support that I have behind having such an awesome family
Right.
team behind me and having so much of it, because I mean I could tell you about my family all day and I wouldn't get to the end of it, but they're amazing. And then on top of that, I actually went to a private school for a long time growing up. And then I finished out, graduated in a public school. But with that private school, I have a big faith.
Right.
And that's something that also ties into parts of my family where if I didn't have that to lean on, I wouldn't, be who I am today. So, I mean, I credit who I am to my family being so awesome and so loving and so helpful, and also my just faith in God to get me through all the things.
I love that. And I think that those are a great combination to really show the dynamics of how those both can play a part in creating the person we are.
Mm-hmm.
And Kelsey, now you didn't get a full year last year. You started about a month in. You're not getting a full year this year because of COVID-19. Talk to me a little, like, how are you just handling it all? Because I know, like, for you it was probably such an exciting year this year to go, like, I'm in the grade level that I love now, I get to have a whole full year where they're all mine, and then things just change at the drop of a hat. Because I know for you in particular, you work in a school district where you sent your kids off to spring break not knowing anything was going to be different, thinking I'm going to see you guys in a week, and yet you've yet to see them months down the road. So how are you holding up through all this?
I was really excited to start this year. I was excited about the grade that I was in. I was excited to start it out because I think part of the issues, not issues, but part of the things I struggled with last year was coming in to something that was already set and then having to force to make it my own. So I was really excited to start the year in my own room with my own things and make things the way that I want them to be. And I mean, this has been a wonderful year. I have awesome children. I have a really good team that, I learned from. And like you said, it was, all right, spring break, see you in a week. And then we didn't. And I wish that I had known. And you hear that from everyone. You wish you'd have known, because I was just telling my fiance the other day, once we got word that school was out completely for the rest of the year, when I was sending them on the bus and doing things, it was, all right, bye, love you, see you later, goodbye, have a good spring break, bye, 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 get on the bus, bye. And I wouldn't have been in so much of a hurry if I'd have known that that was the last time that I was going to see them in person for the rest of the year. And it was, throughout this whole thing, I think everyone kind of knew that it was a very good possibility we weren't going to go back, but I was holding up hope that we would, up until we got the note from, the governor that we wouldn't. And I read it, and I was sad, but I was like, I expected it, and I was okay until about 10 minutes later. I was sharing something from the school to my class Facebook page that my parents follow. And I was just writing, I was going to write a little bit, you know, if I'd have known, I would have gotten a proper goodbye. And that's, I think, when the dam broke and I just started crying. And I was like, I just wasn't expecting it. And I was, but wasn't. And I didn't think that I would get quite so emotional about it. But I think just having to write that goodbye and not being able to like say it to them in person got me, because I mean, I've being with the kids this whole year and having kids that are, you know, they're still young in third grade and they still like attach to you really like emotionally and things like that. I really grew like a special bond with this group. And so I was really looking forward to finishing the year with them. And so I don't know, it was just, it hit me, and it took a little bit for me to, I guess, feel the way that I ended up feeling. But I mean, it is what it is.
You know, I think you're exactly right with it. Hits in waves though. And, you know, I think there'll be days or moments and days where it's easier. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we don't get to do this, or I didn't get to say this, or I wish this would have happened. And those things kind of cycle, because this is a form of grief, because, you know, as educators, we do really pour into our kids and we love them, and we like to have those closures where we get to say goodbye. The benefit of you is that these kids, as they move up next year, you'll still see them on the campus. So there is that little caveat of, okay, well, at least I still get to see some of them. It doesn't heal all the pain, but, and so, you know, now you're in this whole online teaching. You've got another month and a half of it now to try to figure out. And so what do you think has been the biggest learning curve for you to make this your own now?
I mean, we're doing like, we're supposed to be doing videos each week. I mean, I have like my anchor charts. I was doing some videos like before I, you know, got on this call with you and stuff, and I have some supplies over there. And so just having to adjust to that was kind of weird. You know, talking to your class that's not there is just so strange. But I think the big thing that it wasn't even a super big mind adjustment, because it's something that I just thought of, you know, once all this was happening, was while I still want my kids to be learning and practicing the things at home, my biggest thing for them is I want them to feel, you know, the safeness and still feel like the love and things. So while, you know, we're still giving assignments and things like that, my biggest thing is I want them to, from whoever they're with, whether it be parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whatever the situation is, I want those people to give those kids love, because it is such a weird, uncertain time that we have a lot of kids that want to be at school, you know, and we have kids that want to be home. But I also have kids that I've been messaging back and forth with parents, and I'm like, oh, are they bored with it yet? And they're like, well, they were excited until they realized they wouldn't go back at all. Yeah. And now they're kind of sad and bored. And so it's been something that I've had to put in my brain, where it's not necessarily like the assignments, they're important, but the most important thing to me is that their needs are getting met, like emotionally and things like that. So
you know, I couldn't agree more. And I love, you know, there's so many educators who are out there saying just what you're saying of, you know, our job is to teach the content, and we're in this new world and we're trying to figure it out by doing it online. But because so many things are in flux, and families without jobs, and changing the way schedules work and all this other stuff, that love and safety, that is so much more important right now than solely the educational piece. And so I love to hear that you're also focusing on that, because I think, you know, that's what we got to keep in mind. It's like right now, grades should be the last thing on our list, and just getting some content out there, but then just checking in on kids, because they're just as anxious and overwhelmed and hurting just as much as the educators are. So I love hearing that.
Absolutely.
Well, Kelsey, you know, one question that I always love to end these conversations on is, I believe as people, there are certain beliefs that we really hold deep to our hearts that are just who we are. And so for the people listening or watching today, if there was one thing that you wish more people knew or understood, what would your one thing be?
I thought about this because I know you end it this way. So it kind of ties, what I want to say ties back to what we started our conversation on. And it's something that I personally still have to remind myself with, is that you can make a plan, but it's not always going to end up the way that you thought it would. I originally thought that I was going to go back and teach back in San Antonio area where I came from. And I'm here, teaching still in Navasota. And so that didn't turn out the way it was. I continued living in the Bryan area after I graduated college, which wasn't the plan when I moved here. Fifth grade wasn't the plan. And now it's taught me a lot. And it's made me who I am today to have all these changes. And I wouldn't have the life that I have today that I love so much. I wouldn't change the way that my life has turned out for anything. And so I think just trusting in God to know that he has a plan for you, even if it's not exactly what you want to hear. And just trusting in that. I mean, we're trying to plan our wedding right now, and we're supposed to get married in June, and this stuff is hitting. So it's a very uncertain time, and it's frustrating and it's upsetting, and we're still trying to feel out what the end result's going to be. But I'm still having to remind myself of that advice too, of hopefully it turns out the way that it, is planned. But if it doesn't, then there's some reason or something that God has, planned. So it's a hard lesson, and it's something that takes, just remembering and reminding yourself all the time. But that would be my kind of advice, or something that I would tell someone in all areas of life.
I love that. And that is a beautiful way to end this. Well, Kelsey, I was so excited when you agreed to come on. So thank you for coming and sharing some of your story today.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you everybody for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you want it, it's there. I hope today's conversation with Kelsey has inspired you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.